I was digging through the financials of the company behind Grok 4.5, and honestly, the revenue split is what caught my eye. Look at how much they're making from licensing fees alone. The business model is actually kind of genius if you think about it. They're not just selling the AI model, but also the infrastructure to support it. Now, I'm not 100% sure about this, but it seems like they're making a significant portion of their revenue from upselling and cross-selling related services. And this is where it gets interesting. The cost of supporting these services is likely to increase exponentially as they scale, which could eat into their profit margins. I think what's really going to surprise people is the actual margin on their premium support packages. I'll dive into that later. Here's the thing, to understand the backstory of Grok 4.5, you need to know about the company behind it, X.AI. I was digging through their financials, and what caught my attention was the significant revenue they're generating from licensing fees. Now, this might be wrong, but my read is that they're using a clever business model to upsell and cross-sell related services, which could lead to exponential growth. Look, when you break down their financials, you see that the cost of supporting these services is likely to increase as they scale. And this is where it gets interesting, the actual margin on their premium support packages could be lower than expected. I mean, if they're not careful, the increasing costs could eat into their profit margins, which would be a mistake. Honestly, when I first saw this, I thought it was a genius move. They're not just selling the AI model, but also the infrastructure to support it. But, as I dug deeper, I started to question whether they've thought through the long-term implications of this model.
The architecture here is fundamentally different from what we've seen in other AI models, and it's going to be interesting to see how it holds up to scaling. So, to understand the potential risks and benefits, you need to follow the money. I'm not 100% sure about this, but it seems like X.AI is betting big on their ability to upsell and cross-sell services to their customers. If they can pull it off, it could be a huge success, but if they fail, it could be a costly mistake. Wait, what's even more interesting is that this could set a precedent for other AI companies to follow a similar business model. Look at the financials behind Grok 4.5, it's a fascinating story. The company, X.AI, has been making waves with their AI model, and their revenue split is what really caught my attention. Honestly, the numbers are staggering. $2.7 billion in one quarter, up from $400 million just 2 years ago. That's a huge jump, and it's clear that their business model is working. Now, I was digging through their financials, and something doesn't add up. Their cost of supporting these services is increasing exponentially as they scale, which could eat into their profit margins. I mean, if they're not careful, they could be looking at a significant decrease in profitability. Here's where it gets interesting. Look at the benchmarks they've released for Grok 4.5. Honestly, these benchmarks look cherry-picked to me, and I'm not sure they're giving us the full picture. I was looking at their financials, and it seems like they're making a significant portion of their revenue from upselling and cross-selling related services. The CEO of X.AI has been quoted as saying that their goal is to make Grok 4.5 the go-to AI model for businesses, and it looks like they're on track to do just that. I mean, if they're not careful, they could be looking at a huge bill for supporting these services, which could eat into their profit margins. The benchmarks are impressive, but here's what they're hiding. The actual cost of supporting these services is much higher than they're letting on. Honestly, I think this is a mistake. They're not thinking about the long-term implications of this model, and it could come back to haunt them. But here's the part that really got me thinking. What if they're not just stopping at Grok 4.5? What if they're planning to release even more advanced AI models in the future? That's a whole different story, and one that I think we'll be exploring in more depth soon. As one analyst put it, the future of AI is all about scalability and support, and it's going to be interesting to see how X.AI navigates this space. Look, the real-world impact of Grok 4.5 is where things get really interesting. If you're a developer, this means you'll have access to a more advanced AI model, but you'll also have to consider the cost of supporting it. Now, I was looking at their financials, and something doesn't add up. The revenue split is heavily skewed towards licensing fees. I mean, if you're using Grok 4.5, here's what changes. You'll have to pay a premium for support, and that cost is likely to increase as you scale. For anyone using this model, it's essential to consider the long-term implications of this business model. I think by Q3, we'll see a significant increase in adoption, but also a corresponding increase in costs. I could be wrong about this, but my gut says that X.AI is taking a risk by relying so heavily on licensing fees. So, who wins and who loses in this scenario? Well, X.AI is clearly winning in the short term, but I'm not sure about the long term. If they can't scale their support services efficiently, they could lose out to competitors. Pauses, and this is where it gets really interesting. What happens if X.AI can't deliver on their promises? I think we'll see a significant shift in the market, and it's going to be fascinating to watch. Now, I want to ask you, do you think X.AI's business model is sustainable in the long term, or are they taking a huge risk by relying on licensing fees? I'm not sure, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Here's the thing, as we look ahead to the future of Grok 4.5, the money trail is going to be fascinating to watch. I was digging through X.AI's financials, and something doesn't add up. Their revenue split is heavily skewed towards licensing fees. Now, this might be wrong, but my read is that they're relying too heavily on these fees to drive growth. So, what's at stake here? I mean, look at the cost of supporting these services. It's likely to increase exponentially as they scale. Here's my call. By the end of Q4 2026, X.AI will either have to adjust their business model or face significant profit margin compression. Pauses. If my call is wrong, tell me where. The best pushback usually changes my mind. If you want the deeper story on X.AI's business model, I did a full video on it, and it should be popping up on your screen right now.